Welcome to the Tech Ed Podcast. I am your host, Matt Kirkner. Today we are talking about a technology that everybody uses. It's technology that I would venture to guess every single one of our listeners uses every single day. It is not your smartphone. No, it is not your PC. It is not that autonomous driving feature on the car that you drive. Today we are talking about, and we're going to learn how this is technology. We are going to talk about your mattress, and we are going to talk about that technology with just a perfect guest for the topic, talking about digital retail strategy, talking about the changes in technology in terms of the way we sleep, all the information that we're gathering, how we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning in terms of mattress design, and so on. Our guest for this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast is George Hanson, and George is the Chief Digital Officer for a well-known company, an organization known to so many of our listeners, and that is Mattress Firm. And George, can't thank you enough for joining us on the Tech Ed Podcast. Thanks for being with us.
Matt, great to be with all of you and your listeners.
So you've got this incredible background. You've led digital retail strategy for a wide range of really well-known brands. I know our listeners will be familiar with brands like Under Armour, certainly Lands' End, which is headquartered right here in my home state of Wisconsin, Panera, and now you are the Chief Digital Officer at Mattress Firm. So tell us a little bit about the journey to this opportunity and why you're so excited to be in the position you're in now.
Yeah, 20 years in apparel retail, loved it. But what I learned was the most when I moved to different industries and different verticals. And, when I shifted from apparel to food, you learn so much and the operations are different. There's a lot that ties it together. But I loved applying what I learned in one industry into another. And then, when I started looking at the Mattress Firm opportunity, I saw a hidden gem, one that had the scale unrivaled in terms of just 2,400 locations, over $4 billion in sales, and really was focused and is focused on the larger noble purpose of helping people sleep well so that they can live well. And while many companies have a great noble purpose, few have the market share to actually impact that across the customers. And with our size and scale, we actually can help America sleep better. And as somebody who has sleep apnea and struggles with sleep myself, there's a personal element to it as well. And I'd say that the last piece of it that was a fascinating challenge is I love to build and I love to transform. And there are a few more legacy. There's few other legacy categories, maybe tires, that are right for that. And Mattress Firm has made a lot of progress and has been an innovator, but really was looking for an acceleration to that. And that was incredibly exciting for me.
One of the things that I get asked often is, what's the secret to having so much energy to be able to go kind of full speed from, 5 in the morning until the later hours of the evening? And my answer to that question is always, I am maniacal about getting my sleep, about getting 7.5, 8 hours of sleep every day, tremendous amounts of energy flow from doing that. So what you just said really resonates with me. Exuberating and using all that energy in a wide variety of backgrounds as well. To your point about learning things in different market sectors and taking them to a new market sector, I think there's a great lesson there for our especially younger listeners as they think about their careers. And that lesson is that your career choice as you're coming out of high school, whatever comes after your secondary education, isn't a life sentence. And there's all kinds of opportunities to move from role to role, to apply what you learned in the previous role into the new role. So I like the way that you answered that question, and a great message for our younger listeners. One of those things that you're applying now is setting goals for the transformation of a digital strategy for a huge company, as you mentioned, $1 billion company with thousands of locations. As you do that, what are some of those goals that you're thinking about for the future of Mattress Firm?
I think there's such a massive attitude and perception shift happening, where in the past sleep was like, you almost were embarrassed to say that you slept 8 hours, right? Because it was perceived as lazy and so when we're really looking at the trends, customers, Google search trends, if you look at the 4 pillars of wellness, exercise, nutrition, activity, and sleep, sleep by far is getting more searches. There's more interest in it. People are really shifting their perception and understanding of the impact sleep has on them. And I'd say that insight, that trend, that consumer behavior, and that ultimately that purpose is what is also fueling our digital strategy. And so, our main goals, outside of the ones you'd expect from a retailer, which is driving enterprise value and sales and all of that, from our perspective, we're looking at digital as an enabler to help customers sleep better, at the root of it. And so, yes, we sell physical products, but ultimately what we offer is sleep expertise to help you sleep better. And that comes through in the store experience today. Because I think 4 or 5 years ago, Mattress Firm switched from really the heavy sales model and what many people perceived as the sort of the used car sales model, to one that was very consultative and rooted in sleep expertise. And our sleep experts actually get more sleep wellness training than a doctor does or a med school student gets through their medical school time. It's really quite remarkable. And so that's the core of what all of the things we're doing around digital transformation is leading up to. It bifurcates into two main goals, which is empowering our sleep experts with the best in-class selling tools, things that can help them diagnose and help the customer find the right sleep solution. And then for those customers on .com, really making sure that they can navigate and explore and research, whether they choose to go into the store after that with more confidence, or if they choose to buy online. And so everything is centered around those two, the customer and the sleep expert, to ultimately help them find the right sleep solution.
And I love that whole kind of mission-driven aspect to the work that you're doing, and that really resonates with me. I think as we think about the world of, of business development, of sales, multiple markets are moving now towards that consultative approach to selling. I think especially now with the access that people have to digital tools to really, really quickly discern, both from an economic standpoint and from a performance standpoint, the types of products that are going to work for them. Just generally speaking, you think about the transformation of how we have to deliver value and how we have to communicate value to potential clients and potential customers. And it really is about showing where we can add value, where we can make their life better, where we can take a problem, in some cases they may not even know that they have, and solve that problem for them to create a better lifestyle, a better opportunity, and a better future for that potential customer. So what you're saying really resonates with me, and it's certainly aligned with the way that we look at a lot of different businesses that we're involved in. So appreciate the way that you answered that question as we look at how digitization is really changing every single industry. I mentioned earlier some of the industries that I've been involved with, but here on the Tech Ed Podcast, we have people from the automotive industry, from finance, from healthcare, from education, lots and lots of Fortune 500 CEOs, senior executives of huge, huge companies like yourself. And so we dig deep into what is happening in the areas of IoT, industrial Internet of Things, the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Before we get into some of the more details of some of the things that you've tipped us off to already, George, in terms of technology and how we sleep and how you're training your team members around that technology, we would just love for 30,000 feet to hear from your perspective about, what is unique in terms of the digital strategy for a retail company like Mattress Firm.
At a high level, it's really about connecting our digital experiences with the store. Up until recently, it's been very siloed, which isn't unique in the industry, which isn't unique in retail, but I think a lot of retail have moved beyond that. Mattress Firm is quickly accelerating that connection because, again, of that insight. 90% of the transactions technically happen in our store, but they're followed with that first step. And so if the customer feels that that's disconnected, we haven't helped them gain confidence around their, understanding their problem, their preferences, and then ultimately the right sleep solution. So we take a very problem solution orientation to our digital strategy. And it's one that's equal balanced, like I said, around serving our retail associates and building, designing, and serving them at the same level that we do actually for our end consumer, just because of the pivotal role they play in our business model and where they add so much value. And I'd say that's unique from every other retail environment I've worked in and a lot of other retail in general. Um, and it's not about, it's just really understanding where the value is most created and how you help that customer. We in other retail environments, you don't invest as much in the associate because they play a different role. They're less in many other retailers, their role is less central to the solutioning, right? And in our business, the sleep experts are central to the solutioning, and so they have to be built for, served, and designed at the same level as we do for customers.
Well, there's a couple things that you just said that that really piqued my interest. I mean, the whole idea when you think about this day and age of digital retail and Amazon and being able to order anything you want at any time, and here you're saying 90% of your sales still happen inside the retail store, which surprises me. I think in a good way, and obviously when somebody's making a real personal and long term decision like the purchase of a mattress, it would make sense that they're doing it that way. But then having an individual, who among us hasn't gone to a big box store looking for some help and couldn't find somebody that was knowledgeable about the products in a way that was valuable to us. And here you're saying that at the very core of the work you're doing is that individual at the retail facility who is assisting a client, assisting a customer in making the absolute best decision for them. We talk on the Tech Ed podcast a lot from the manufacturing standpoint about doing what we say is going to the Gemba, going where the action is. It's a lean manufacturing term where it's like if you really want to figure out how to improve a business, figure out where you're engaging with the customer and understand that interaction. And that's a great place to start in terms of transforming any business. And it sounds like that's exactly the starting spot. And you've done incredible work in that regard. As technology, by the way, continues to evolve in digitization and advancements in mattress technology are having a huge impact on your market. So, you don't necessarily think about a mattress as technology, but as we suggested in the introduction, technology in the digitization age are really having a huge impact on the business that you're in. So when we talk about mattress technology, what does that really mean? And how is mattress technology, and for that matter, pillows, beds, and so on, how is that evolving? And where were we, 15, 20 years ago? And tell us how we got to where we are today.
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I mean, a few decades ago, a good mattress, was one that could deliver enough support to avoid back pain or comfortable enough for you to fall asleep before your arm did. A very utilitarian sort of approach to a physical product. And if you think about, very much like active apparel and footwear, mattresses have evolved beyond utility use as well. And just like cell phones and watches, people are looking for their mattresses to work harder and give more than just a comfortable surface to sleep on. And so the technology, I'd say there's two different levels of technology when you're thinking about mattress or physical sleep product. There's the actual technology of the materials and the construction, which is way beyond where it was even 10 years ago. And then the other element is bringing all of those components together as a sleep system to help you ultimately sleep better. Those are the two, ways that I would sort of bifurcate or segment, technology within sleep and bedding. And it's fascinating. And there's a ton of innovation that I think most people, don't realize. And I think we, as a leader in the industry, have a lot of work to do to help communicate how much actually goes into the construction, the consideration of the fabrics, the textiles. I mean, delivering things like cooling, which for me was very, very personal. I needed a much cooler sleeping environment, and we made a change after I joined Mattress Firm, and it's been a total changer to me. And I just didn't know that a mattress could actually deliver on technical features and benefits the way that they can. There's a ton of innovation happening. I would say on the software side of it, there are some niche products that can that adjust. Certainly, we sell bases that detect your snoring and start to move in the middle of the night without you knowing to open up your airways. I mean, that's incredibly innovative and powerful and directly delivers a benefit. And so that's the other piece of, sort of software driven innovation that again all ladders up to better sleep and better health.
Well, and in some cases, maybe even a better marriage, right? If you have a mattress that can literally adjust in the, as an individual is sleeping to solve for a snoring issue. I mean, that is fascinating to think about how that technology has evolved and how that whole system that you talk about has evolved. And it really is a system. Like so many of the things that we discuss here on the Tech Ed podcast, it's never one element of technology. It's how that technology fits into an overall system. It's why we talk so much about the importance of systems thinking as we're educating the next generation of talent, whether it's in STEM or other areas of the workforce. And one of the things that we talk about with regard to those systems is the whole idea of edge devices, of being able to use smart sensors and smart devices to monitor all kinds of things. And whether that's, your experience in apparel or in, hospitality or the restaurant space or now in the mattress space, being able to monitor the user and understand that behavior really, really important. And so, it elicits a question in my part in terms of the whole idea of sleep science. I mean, who among us hasn't heard a commercial for this whole cottage industry of sleep science and understanding how to improve sleep from a medical standpoint? I would be curious about how sleep science is influencing mattress design and whether you can give some examples of specific technologies or features that are now being used as a result of what we've learned from sleep science.
Yeah, so Mattress Firm actually has a very unique relationship with Sleep Score Labs out of San Diego, who really are the leading experts in science-based research around sleep disruptors. So they do a lot of industry product testing, independent, peer-reviewed, academic, like literally like how vaccines are developed is with that level of scientific rigor. And we bring that data in for two reasons. One is to help inform the product development process that we both do for our own private label brands, but also insights that we bring to our manufacturing partners. So that's super powerful. The second is the insights that we get from those tests help our sleep experts when they're working with customers to address their sleep disruptors or their sleep needs, not with opinions, not even necessarily with ratings and reviews, although those can be very helpful, but with actual science, with peer-reviewed rigor, and it's really powerful. We recently developed our new Sleepies by Sealy memory foam assortment using a combination of this sleep research and state-of-the-art testing technology. And that's one example where we've taken those insights to actually build and develop proprietary technology and new products that are, on our floors today.
Perfect example of how we're using science and using that in the whole world of product development. And there again, for anybody interested in a role in engineering, and I'm sure there's all kinds of different aspects and disciplines of engineering that go into whether it's the manufacturing or the research and development or the actual product development side of a mattress, all those opportunities again for young people. And just hearing those observations in terms of how you're using sleep science in the work that you're doing, I've got to believe that there's now huge data sets available in terms of, if you think about anybody wearing a monitoring device while they're sleeping, that's pulling data in a generic sense without necessarily having any issues with regard to privacy. We can pull those data sets up and look at just generalized trends and so on in data, and then use technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning. And of course, here in what we call the summer of AI, the summer of 2024, we can't hardly have a conversation without asking the AI question. So George, I'd be interested in that. How are you using now, and how do you see artificial intelligence and machine learning being used going forward as well to enhance mattress performance and the sleep experience as well?
Yeah, it is something we're definitely looking at and actually beginning to test and use. I think what we really try to focus on is the problem that we're trying to solve or the experience that we're trying to provide. And then ask the question, which technologies can help us amplify and accelerate against that, right? If you start with the technology and look for a problem, usually you force it. And so we really try to flip it around and say, what problems can we solve with different technologies, and let's candidate which ones can actually do the most. But if you think about it at the beginning of the journey, a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of people start online. They might be searching with Google. And so there's a lot of embedded AI technology in our partners' solutions, in Google and others, that help us deliver the right message to the right audience in the right channel. And so I think from a beginning of the consideration funnel, we're deploying embedded AI technology with our partners to be able to, serve the right message to the right customers obviously in a compliant way. We also have sleep.com and the sleep.com sleep app. And that does track sleep, consented sleep tracking data, over, 1 million profiles, a lot of sleep data. We use, machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze that data and to serve what we believe will be the most helpful sleep wellness content for them and their sleep disruptors. If they're waking up in the middle of the night, the content, we would serve to them would be, in the spirit of helping them address that or minimize that. Those are really powerful use cases, problem, solution, supported by technology. I wouldn't say led by technology. We're being led by our purpose. We're being led by a strategy to deliver on that. And we shop for technology that can play an assist role, and less so a lead role, actually.
Well, and I think embedded in that answer is just great advice, George, for any organization that is looking at how to apply AI and machine learning in their operations, in their development, and so on. And the first one you start with, let's not start with the technology and find a problem. Let's find a problem or an opportunity to improve the customer experience or business performance or what have you, and use artificial intelligence and machine learning in the same way that we would use any other tool that we're utilizing to improve performance. So I really, really like that. It's not a solution in search of a problem. It's how are we trying to improve our business or our organization, and then how can we use those technologies to do so. The second one, we talk a lot about embedded smart technology, and that if you're starting your AI journey, you don't necessarily have to start with, Data Factory and Microsoft Azure and a big data set. You can start with a lot of the embedded technologies that are already available to you as a company or an organization. Using all the analytics and the data available from a search engine like Google is a perfect example. When we talk about manufacturing, we talk about acquiring manufacturing equipment that already has smart technology, smart sensors and devices riding on it, and you leverage that technology. And then the third way is to take a look at, okay, what data sets do we have? What problems are we trying to solve? And in your case, consented information and data from over 1 million individuals. That's a tremendous data set. Most companies have data sets available to them. They probably don't even realize they have. And if they start collecting, or at least the ability to collect that data, you collect it, and then you can use some of the more advanced tools to say, here's my data set. Let's find some patterns in this data that might help us solve whatever problem it is that we're going after. So I really, really like the way that you answered that question, because as I suggest, I think there's some really good advice for anybody beginning their AI journey in terms of your experience and the way that you're thinking about and going about using artificial intelligence and machine learning. I've got to believe that one of those areas, as you already suggested, is in terms of the customer experience as they're getting familiar with their brand, as they're thinking about how they're going to possibly engage with Mattress Firm, consider buying a mattress, and so on. There's a lot of changes that are taking place with regard to that whole digital world. And as I think about organizations that have a strong physical presence, as certainly your organization does, and matching the retail experience with the digital experience, how do you think about that? Tell us a little bit about, how the experience of buying a mattress is changing in light of the fact that we've got all these tools available to us that we didn't maybe 25 years ago.
Yeah, it's, as I said before, 90% happen in the stores. And I think that's a function of our footprint and the nature of the product category. If you can try it, why not? You get more confidence at our price points that we sell at. Most people want to try it. And so it's really about assisting them in that journey and increasing their confidence and knowledge base. More than, anything, what has changed is the customer and their growing, the level of research they do, the resources that they have. It used to be maybe 20 years ago, they would just walk into a mattress store. If you think about a mattress, it's something you purchase maybe every 8 to 10 years. There's not a lot of perceived differentiation, or there wasn't back then. And it's a confusing category because, it's very hard for customers to understand the different value drivers unless you're working with the right information or the right expert. And so what we are seeing is a lot more research, a lot more online research, but that the customer ultimately still comes into the store. And so how do we link those two? How do we take what they've researched online, what maybe our mattress matching technology, which identifies your sleep disruptors and your sleep preferences, along with other factors, and recommends a personalized set of recommendations for you online, connecting that with this when you walk into the store, and the sleep expert can pick up where you left off and maybe start to introduce you to those and have you try them. Fundamentally, the experience has evolved where the customer has many, many more tools to feel like they're getting the right solution for them. They just need that extra bit of confidence that comes from our credible experts, and that expertise is really hard to develop and maintain, but it's something Mattress Firm has done and focused on.
So now I'm combining, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but I'm combining this in-store personalized experience with the upfront worker engagement that's happening with that client in a digital environment, with big data sets that we can leverage using artificial intelligence and machine learning to create kind of the seamless journey for the client in a way that's incredibly efficient. They're not, who among us hasn't gone to the doctor or spent time in a hospital and been asked the same question 10 different times and wondered, why does every single person have to ask me the same question? So you're streamlining this experience through the retail experience for the client. Is that kind of how it's all fitting together? Are you using like data sets and insights that you're gathering on a macro basis and then using those to personalize the experience for the client?
Absolutely. So it starts with the customer information, which they provide or decide to provide. It's with their permission. And we take the millions of customers we've served and connect their sleep disruptors, their sleep preferences, their ratings and reviews, post-purchase, how they evaluate the bed, return rates, all of it, to fuel what we have built as a proprietary solution called Mattress Matcher. And that's the experience that you'll experience if you walk into the store. That's what our sleep experts will walk you through, is our Mattress Matcher. And it's also accessible online. Behind all of those, what appears to be sort of simple question and answers is a really complex data set that's taking our years of retail experience, product development experience, customer reviews, customer feedback, and bringing that all to the point of consideration when the customer is coming in and looking for a solution to their sleep disruptors, or they may not even realize they have sleep disruptors. They just think they need a new mattress because it's saggy or whatever, and they get a massive education around all of the components. And so, yes, we do leverage that data, and it's very, very powerful, and it's especially in a category where, like I said before, it's really difficult. Because it's not something that you buy that often. If you think about, buying a sweater at Nordstrom, there's a lot of value cues. There's what's the fabrication? Well, people know cashmere costs more than cotton, and a turtleneck is going to cost more than a vest, and a polo sweater is going to cost more than a private label sweater. It's less so in mattresses. It's less obvious. And so it requires that expertise and that natural language presentation to help the customer understand the link between the physical products and the better sleep.
Whether it's retail or it's manufacturing or hospitality or energy or any of these, when people are trying to wrap their brain around how we can use data to improve a client experience, the analogy I always use would be like Spotify or Apple Music. And they're like, how does it always know exactly what song I want to listen to next? It's just amazing. It can just, on automatic mode, serve up song after song after song people are like, how does it know that? And it's like, well, with your permission, Spotify, for instance, knows a lot about you. It probably knows your date of birth. It knows where you live. It knows your billing history. It knows what kind of music you listen to. It knows what you skip. It knows who you follow. It knows what they listen to. It knows who follows you. It knows who they listen to. Creating all of these multiple data sets and then using AI and machine learning, it can perfectly predict exactly what you want to hear next. In a lot of ways, that's a little bit of the experience I'm hearing from you today, George, with one exception, by the way, and that is this huge role of, whereas Spotify or Apple Music, all digital, you keep talking about the sleep expert. You keep talking about the person in the store that's going to meet an individual where they are when they walk into the environment, and coach them through this experience, and maybe even let them know that they had an issue or a problem they didn't even know they had because of all of this training. To your earlier point, more training in sleep technology and so on than somebody in the medical profession. That's a really, really telling statistic, by the way. But so let's talk about these sleep experts a little bit. In the age of digitization, many people might say that the role of the direct business development person, the direct retail person, it would be going away. And in your case, you're doubling down on that role. So tell us a little bit about that. How has digitization changed that role? But also, what new skills do they need to be successful in the environment?
Yeah, it definitely is very different than what it was, and it all revolves around technology. Certainly, the advancements we were talking about before in the mattress and the physical product technology, there's just a lot more for the sleep experts to learn, to know, to distinguish, to be able to compare. So that has gotten way more complex. But the actual physical technology, we built what we call it the Dream Hub for our sleep experts. It's an internally built application which has all of the customer information, all of the product information, mattress matcher. They can help build the cart right there on the floor, and they can compare and go deep on the product detail. It's also their clienteling and local CRM solution as well. And it's really customized and built for our business model and our sleep experts. The teams have shopped a lot of the products out in the marketplace and felt like it wasn't there for what all of our needs were. So the teams have built it internally, and it is a different skill set. And what we see in the data is when our sleep experts use Mattress Matcher to help customers find the right sleep solution, conversion's higher. And when you have 2,400 stores and you can measure how much it's being used and what adoption looks like, it's very, very clear to us that the stores and the individual sleep experts who use these tools the most perform the best.
It's a perfect example of something that I say often, which is that artificial intelligence isn't going to take your job, but that someone using artificial intelligence to do their job better might well take your job. And in this case, it's really talking about how we use artificial intelligence to improve the customer experience and really leverage the skills of a direct business development person. And what I'm hearing from you, if I'm correct, is you actually improve engagement and you're winning more business, for lack of a better term, maybe not the best choice of words, by utilizing AI and machine learning in that customer engagement. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's not just about riding the hype cycle and pushing this down from corporate into the stores and marking a win on a product roadmap. We actually don't require the sleep expert to use it or to use it at a certain level. What we require is our sleep experts to create a great place to shop for our customers, create a great place to work, amongst the team at the store, and to hit their financial objectives. If they choose to not use the technology and still accomplish all three, that's fine. If they aren't hitting their financial objectives and they're not using the tools that we know can do it, then that's part of the coaching and part of the feedback process. But what we've learned is, technology adoption has to prove itself, and we've proved it at the macro level, but at the individual level is really where the transformation happens. When they see that recommendation, more often than not, get a conversion, and the customer then, when they contact them 30 days later to ask them how they're sleeping, and the customer is thrilled and happy, and there's a great review on it, and there's a great store Google review on it, that's stronger than any mandate you can ever provide from, corporate. So that's really our approach to it. And we take a data driven approach to that type of rollout, adoption, communication. Obviously, we take and put, build statues to people who are using them and driving the best results, and we share that as a best practice. And that's really how we get momentum and adoption around these capabilities.
Well, and in some ways, it just makes sense. A mentor of mine in the sales world once told me that you will close more deals, for lack of a better term, by asking the right questions than you ever will by giving the right answers. And a big part of that is because when you ask the right questions, when you show that customer or client that you're genuinely interested in their well-being and their future, and you take the time to understand what problem they're trying to solve, or what challenge they're trying to get beyond, or how your product might be able to benefit them, all of a sudden you've got an individual on the other side of that relationship that recognizes that you care, recognizes that you're taking the time to ask the right questions, and you're going to have that much more confidence in whatever answers they're giving you than you would have otherwise if you just walked into a store and somebody, without really knowing much about you, tried to explain to you why a particular product was best for you. I think especially in this world of sleep science and in the mattress market and so on. You think about, to your point, you're gonna use this product for 8 to 10 years. You're probably not buying a new one every year. It is a relatively big decision. We know a lot more today about the value and the importance of sleep maybe than we did 20 years ago. It does raise a question or two in my mind about the future of retail. As we record this, just this morning here in my hometown of Milwaukee, they announced that they're tearing down what's called Northridge Mall. Now, that mall has been vacant for quite some time, but it's really the changing face of retail and the way that we engaged with the retail provider 10 and 20 years ago. So much different today. Would just be interested in your thoughts, because you sit kind of at this apex of digitization and bricks and mortar retail. What do you think the future is for retail, and what are the opportunities and some of the challenges facing the retail environment today?
I think some of the biggest challenges are retailers losing focus on being great at the fundamentals of retail, actually. And that's really comes down to product, service, brand, creative, location, pricing. Like, those are the fundamentals. And I think there's a lot of risk of being distracted from those. And I don't necessarily put AI and technology as a distraction. Like I said, if you think about in the right way as an amplifier or an accelerant in support of your retail strategy, you're gonna be okay. But I feel like the hype cycle can actually start to distract retailers in going in a direction around technology or innovation for innovation's sake or technology's sake, and lose sight of the core product, the core value proposition, the customer experience, those things that really are enduring regardless of what the technology cycle is. So I do actually see more and more risk of that across the industry than probably ever before. And so it's more of a watch out. And I think, the other challenges really are for retailers are the Amazons, the Walmarts, and the mega marketplace growth. Those continue to grow and be dominant and be, really more and more where people shop for multiple categories. And so those are two continuing trends that I think retailers need to pay attention to. But I'm also really encouraged by, a lot of the innovation in technology that is being channeled appropriately in support of great products, great experiences, great brands, great value propositions. There's a lot of great retail that's happening out there, and I love the innovation. And there's not one vertical that you can't learn something from and bring it and apply it in a certain way in your own. And that's super exciting. And I think it's really important for retailers to look outside of their own vertical within retail and even outside of the retail industry for innovation and for ideas on how to improve their core fundamentals of their own business.
During my time as a CEO in the manufacturing space, I used to once a month get together with a wide variety of different company leaders from different spaces, whether that was insurance, whether it was retail, whether it was healthcare, whether it was high tech and so on, and really having a great conversation around the fundamentals of business and understanding what makes different businesses tick, and borrowing ideas from one space and bringing them to another. Like you, I went from a few different companies. I had 3 or 4 career transitions, pretty major ones over the course of my career, and every single time, to your earlier point, I brought something from that previous environment into the new environment. But it was also interesting how at its core, really the things that make organizations successful don't change a whole lot. And to your point about retail, going back to basics and understanding what makes retail successful, not necessarily looking, on its own at that bright and shiny new object, not switching from a hurried standpoint into new technologies or into a new environment, or saying we're going to take our whole retail business and put it online. Certainly there are threats to retail, and in some cases there are aspects of online shopping and so on that might be able to improve the client experience. On the other hand, in those areas and for those reasons that people want to or need to conduct business in person, there's huge opportunities and huge value for the world of retail for certain, as the technology and as the economy continues to evolve in ways that it has. We've talked about those, and in ways that it has yet to evolve. And we've talked about in your business some of the transformations that have taken place in sleep science and mattress technology and the digitization of the client experience in terms of preparing your sleep experts in your retail locations to do the very best work they can do with the client, because they are well-informed, because they're using tools that leverage AI and machine learning to improve that customer experience. So that's where we've been, and it's been a phenomenally interesting conversation with George Hanson. I want to ask you now, George, where are we going? What does the next 20, 30 years look like? And we start thinking about technologies like augmented reality and virtual reality. We've got 3D printing. We've got drone technology. I mean, all of these different technologies that are advancing, quite frankly, more quickly than anything or any evolution that we've seen to this point. As you look forward, let's turn us forward to the year 2024. What is the buying experience going to look like? Why don't you dream with us a little bit and surprise us with what we come up with?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love if I just take a use case or what buying a mattress could look like in 20 years. I would hope that we close the gap between the problem and the solution in a way that, while you're considering which sleep solution to buy, you could actually feel and simulate what 2 weeks or 3 weeks in that product would feel like. Somehow that we integrate that with your own biology, with your own body, to be able to simulate or feel what better sleep, better quality sleep, less pain will feel like on that particular product. And I think all that does is, takes us to the edge of solving the problem that customers are coming in with today, that we try to solve with sleep expertise and with data and, all of these things. But if we can get even closer to that and actually have the customer experience and feel that as a part of their retail experience, as a part of their buying experience, I don't know how yet. The how, has to always follow the what, and the what has to be a part of a dream. And the dream would be to get closer to solving the consumer's problem and close the confidence gap that exists in any purchase decision today.
It almost sounds to me like the whole idea of a digital twin, but for the sleep experience. We talk about in the world of manufacturing, which of course is my background, the idea that we can use a digital twin to create a digital simulated version of a manufacturing process and test every single possible variable on that digital twin. And before we ever think about the physical manifestation of that system on a manufacturing floor, we've worked out as many of the kinks as we possibly could. And as I'm hearing you talk about that, I can't help in my mind but draw a corollary between the whole idea of the sleep experience and being able to build the digital twin of the experience of sleeping, so that, to your point, that individual client or potential client can fully experience the benefits of the product. We call that human in the loop as we talk about artificial intelligence and machine learning, and this incredible importance of understanding that individuals and people are still going to play an incredible role in that entire system, leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, all these other technologies to create the best possible outcome for the client. In the end, that is making people's lives better. In the end, that's improving people's lives. It's living out a mission. It's saying, hey, we're going to be more than just a company that sells mattresses. We are going to be a company that literally changes the experience of an individual throughout their life. So really, really important work. And I think some important lessons, George, as we think about anybody who's living at this, this convergence between the whole digital world and the world of retail and kind of traditional consumer relationships. So talk a little bit to those individuals. When you think about the intersection of retail and technology, and let's say we've got individuals who are already working in retail, considering a role or maybe being educated toward a role that would be immersed in the world or in the environment of retail. If you could give those folks a little bit of advice, what would you want them thinking about?
Really three things. Number one would be to work in multiple stores across multiple retailers. That's really where the fundamentals of retail is learned. And if you're curious where you'll find opportunities, whether it be employee facing or customer facing, friction and inefficiencies to solve, as you transition to maybe a corporate role. So I think if you're interested in that intersection, it's very, very, very difficult to really excel and exceed without some time on the ground in the store, working with products, working with customers, understanding the physical environment, how physical and digital are coming at it from the customer and the store's perspective. And then next, I would then pivot over and work for different retailers' digital commerce teams. That's really where you're going to get exposure to all facets or most facets of the business, technology, store operations, marketing, merchandising, supply chain, a broad retail experience, both in the physical space and then in a corporate environment, but digital being at that sort of intersection, to use your word, would be the second. And then third, depending on how deep you want to go into tech, I would become as familiar with it without feeling like you have to be a software engineer to make an impact. GMs and people who can really impact across a broad range of strategy and implementation and operations and all of that tend to have a broader functional experience set versus depth in only one. So I encourage, students and young professionals to really look for those horizontal opportunities rather than just the classic pursuit up the ladder. Those things really set you up. And it, again, depends on what you want to do. But I think that sets you up for the most impact and the broadest perspective over that intersection of retail and technology.
You mentioned the brand Nordstrom a little while ago and thinking about, I don't know if they still do this, but at one time, if I'm correct, every single individual that worked in that company had to start out working in the retail environment and had to get exposed to what it's like to interact directly with a customer, work in a retail environment. To your line of thinking, in multiple retail environments, get an understanding of what different organizations are doing well. We used the term Gemba before, where the action happens, which is right at that intersection of the client and the brand and the physical space. So really, really important. So I think that's a great observation. We talk a lot about you don't have to understand everything about artificial intelligence to use artificial intelligence, or in the words of a friend of mine who runs business analytics for a large Fortune 500 company. His line is you have to get comfortable not knowing exactly what AI is doing, just that it's doing what it's doing. And I think your whole idea that you don't have to be a computer scientist, you don't have to be a data scientist to leverage data in terms of leading an organization, being a GM of an organization, where you can utilize data without necessarily being an expert. And then kind of in between that, understanding the whole digital strategy of multiple organizations that have both a digital approach and a retail approach. I think that's really good advice of how we create really well-rounded leaders for the next generation of how consumers are going to interact with brands and how we are going to sell products to consumers in a really consultative and supportive way. We've had just a wonderful conversation on this whole topic with George Hanson. George, of course, is doing amazing things at Mattress Firm, and we do have one more question for him before we sign off here on this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. I know you're going to have a great example and a great answer to it, and I'm looking forward to it, George. And that is, if you could go back in time to that 15-year-old George Hanson before you went off to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, before you did your graduate work at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. Tell us a little bit about what advice you would give that young 15-year-old version of yourself.
It would really be around being curious and really when you get into consumer facing well-known brands, and then learn horizontally and learn as many of the functions and how the business operates as you can. Even if you choose to select and go deep in one of them, you'll be enriched with that perspective of how the entire organization or entire team works and where value is generated and where different areas play a support or a contributory or a lead role. It's an powerful learning and insight for whatever you choose to do, and that those learnings then transcend to different industries, different companies. Don't just get through the work, really understand the work that you're learning, and then when you get into your first role, just continue to learn, and don't let the title and the pressure to move up in rank suppress or become a barrier to just truly learning the craft. And that will serve you well, both as an individual contributor, as a manager, and as an organizational leader.
We had a guest on the podcast not too long ago, George, that said that the average middle school student can name 12 careers, and there's well over 1,000, some would argue 3,000 different career pathways that young people can choose from, and the average middle school student can name about 12 of them. I think your advice of have this wide variety of experience, look across a wide range of different organizations, have this have different hands-on experiences, different career experiences to really get a good understanding as you're coming of age of what it is that you would excel at, that you would like to do. I always look at things like promotions and titles as a result, not a goal. If you do important work, if you do work that invigorates you, that to your point you're curious about, that you're excited about, work eventually or before long doesn't feel so much like work, you're going to excel at it. The more you excel, the more opportunities you're going to create for yourself in the long term. I'm glad that we created this opportunity to spend some time today with George Hanson, the Chief Digital Officer of Mattress Firm, talking about such a great list of topics, including sleep technology. We've talked about things like the retail experience, your sleep experts, how we converge the worlds of digitization and retail. George, it's been a really, really fun conversation. Can't thank you enough for spending some time with us on the Tech Ed Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Matt, great to be with you and your listeners.
Fascinating conversation today with George Hanson, the Chief Digital Officer of Mattress Firm. I feel like I'm so much more educated about their entire strategy, about the future of retail, about how we can leverage things like artificial intelligence and machine learning in the consumer experience, how we can use that to make the individuals engaging directly with consumers that much more effective at the work they are doing. I learned a tremendous amount on this episode. I'm sure our audience did too. We will link up any of the related topics and resources for you right in the show notes. We know our producer, Melissa Martin, and her team have the best show notes in the business. So check out techedpodcast.com/Hanson. That's techedpodcast.com/HANSON, where you will find all of the show notes, and you will also find us on social media. We are all over TikTok and LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook. Wherever it is you go to check out social media, we will be there. Engage with us. Leave us a comment. Connect to us. We would love to hear from you, and we love the fact that you stopped in on this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. Thank you so much for being with us, and we will see you next week.